Shalom, Havarim. Welcome. Victoria Sarvati here with another Candid Treasures. I'm going to kind of connect to what I talked about last week, and that was those three phases that God will institute in order to redeem man back into himself and to give man power while he lives in this world that is ruled by Satan, and then to restore the world and all of creation. As Acts says, all of creation is waiting. He will stay in heaven until the restoration of all things will be accomplished. And all of creation is waiting and groaning for this restoration process. And so we know that one day the earth will be restored back to the way he originally intended for it to be, and man to live on it along with the holy angels and God's presence being right there with man. What a wonderful utopia that will be. But I want to connect these three phases of God's redemption, his power, and his restoration to the feast of the Lord in Leviticus 23. There are 7 feasts of the Lord. There are 3 in the spring, 1 in the early summer, and 3 in the fall. The 3 in the spring correlate and are connected to God's redemption plan. The feast of Passover, unleavened bread, and first fruits, being that Yeshua would be crucified as the Passover lamb on the day of Passover. He would be put into the ground, buried on the feast of unleavened bread by taking sin into the grave with him, sin represented by leaven according to the feast. And then on the feast of first fruits, he would raise from the dead, being the firstborn of the dead, firstborn from the ground, the very first fruit. And so we see these 3 feasts connecting to the redemption plan, phase 1 of God redeeming man back into himself. The 4th feast comes in the early summer, and it is called the Feast of Pentecost, or Shavuot. And this is the time when the Holy Spirit came down and on the heads and shone up like a fire on the heads of the believers there in the upper room, and they began to speak in other tongues as the Spirit gave them utterance. It was a magnification or a sign of the Holy Spirit entering into them. It wasn't for the function of tongues. It was for the function of for them to live in power in this earth, even though they are in the midst of Satan, in the midst of evil, in the midst of the things that Satan is doing throughout the earth. We're still able to walk in it, powerful and achieving great exploits because of the power of God through the Holy Spirit that lives within us. It sets us apart from everyone else. It gives us our weapons of warfare. We're able to walk in the glory of God and a measure of his Spirit being in us, where we have discernment. We are equipped with all that we need according to his riches. And now we are born into a brand new creation, that second Adam, and we're able to function in this earth until he comes and redeems it, the whole earth, restores it back into himself. So we're to occupy, but we're to occupy in power and in the Holy Spirit. And so that is Shavuot. That is connected to the power of the Holy Spirit that came on that day. The last 3 feasts are in the fall. The fall feast consists of the Rosh Hashanah, or the Yom Teruah. Yom Teruah means the Feast of Trumpets. And we know that it will be at the last trump that Yeshua will come, and we will see him coming on the clouds with the saints of God from heaven, and will be translated into his glory. And then the next feast is Yom Kippur, which is a judgment where God separates the wheat from the tares, or the sheep from the goats, those who will enter that holy mountain versus those who will be condemned or judged in that judgment as unworthy or unrighteous. And so Yom Kippur has to do with a judgment. And of course, we as believers are not above judgment. We are to be judged. And so therefore we should make sure our garments are clean and that we are ready for that judgment as we stand before him, and that we haven't backslidden into the old nature of the first Adam, but that we continue in that new nature of righteousness by the power of the Holy Spirit that he's given us in that first phase as Yeshua came to redeem us, and the second phase, which is the power that allows us to walk in triumphant victory. But then the last feast of the fall feast is called Tabernacles, and it's the time when God restores all things, and it's basically the harvest where he gathers all of his people together, and we come under a sukkah, or a place of family worship, a place of family protection under his sukkah, under his wings, under his tent, under his kingdom. And so it's basically his kingdom being manifest in the earth. So we've got 7 feasts that go hand in hand with his 3-phase plan for restoring man and the earth. The first feast is Passover and unleavened bread and first fruits. That's the Passover season. The first 3 of spring have to do with phase 1, the redemption of man. The fourth feast, or the second phase, is power, and that fourth feast is Shavuot, which is the power of the Holy Spirit. And then the third phase being restoration, and that's correlating with the last 3 feasts of the fall, which is the trumpets, the judgment, and then God restoring his kingdom. Can't you see his perfect plan coming to pass? He has written everything in his word. He will do nothing unless he first tells the prophets, so we won't be surprised. Jesus even tells us the things that must happen. He says, look, I've told you ahead of time. So we don't have to be surprised when these things happen, but we can see God's plan unfolding, and it's a simple plan. Of course, it's not simple to do. It's only by the power of God himself that he's able to execute this. But we are a part of that plan, and it's because of his love for us that he's actually doing it. So friends, I just really look forward to that special time when God restores all things and we're able to live with him in his kingdom. I can't wait for those fall feasts to be manifest. Can you? God bless. Shalom.